We must recognize that, those things that pop up inside our head are important, right? The things that are on our minds and things that, we feel are important to think about or to recognize. And we don't want to just shut them out. But meditation is your 20 minutes of freedom, of actual peace.
Hello, my little buzzlings, and welcome to The Tea with B, a podcast where nothing is off limits. Spill the tea by contacting us on both Twitter and Instagram at The Tea with B, or email us at theteawithbpodcast@gmail.com. On today's episode, we are talking about meditation and some things spiritual. Meditation, it's that thing that we all know is good for us, but how many of us actually do it consistently? Because I know I sure as hell don't. And as much as I remind myself to do it every single day, the times that I do it are probably a little bit less than I'd like to admit on air. But I so want to get better at it and feel those benefits that the CEOs and the billionaires, a quick search on the subject, this is some of the benefits that come from meditating on a daily basis, is it helps build your skills and manage stress, increases self-awareness, helps you focus on the present, reduces negative emotion, and it also helps you build emotional resilience so that you can bounce back quickly from anything that may be happening in your life that is out of your control. Now, I would love some of that. That sounds amazing. But I am no expert on the subject. But my guest today is someone who has personally helped me become better at the practice. And while he may be young, Kevin Chase is definitely wise beyond his years. Welcome, Kevin.
Hey, how's it going?
Kevin, tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to meditate.
Well, I was born and raised in Boise, Idaho. And when I got into high school, I kind of fell into more of a bad crowd and started selling illegal narcotics and, running around with just not so great influences. I was sent to a rehabilitation school where I ended up actually finding meditation originally. And I wasn't too into it to first start off, but I did get a book on it, and I did read a lot because I had a lot of time to myself in that boarding school. Once I got out of that boarding school, I tried to keep some of the things that I had learned from my readings and everything, but it sort of all just fell apart because I wasn't actually actively practicing it. I was more just keeping it in the back of my mind, and I ended up making more poor choices. I fell right back into the same habits. I ended up getting married at a very young age, the age of 18, which of course didn't last very long. After about a year after that whole situation, I kind of realized that I really needed to make a change in my life. And that's when I started to more apply my meditation to my actual life, and I saw a real output from it. I saw a real impact on my life. And so that's just a little bit about me and my background on it.
That's amazing. When you say it out loud and let other people hear it, there are a lot of who have gone through maybe a rough time during their teenage years, and a lot of people end up in the same position as you where they can go down a bad path. Thankfully, you're back on the straight and narrow, but
yeah,
you're kind of the epitome of that person. Prior to going through this life change, did you ever practice meditation? Did you really care about it?
So when I was first, reading about meditation, I was in Costa Rica, and it was a specific section of my program that required that we went to Costa Rica. And, it sounds like a great vacation. In reality, we were in the middle of the rainforest doing God knows what for the community, digging trenches and building bridges and all that sort of stuff. And when I was there reading about meditation, I definitely did try and practice it a lot, but the actual application of the benefits that I was getting from meditation was lacking inside of that boarding school.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about, because I think this is very similar definitely for me, where kind of read about meditation in a book, you see a movie or a documentary, whatever on it. But where was that transition where you read about it, it was a little bit interesting, and finally going to meditating consistently? And I know for you, you have your root chakra is balanced. So do you mind talking about that and also letting people know what it means to balance your root chakra?
Yeah, absolutely. So the root chakra is actually one of my specialties. It's one of my favorite chakras. As you know, that I really like to use with really just the chakra system in general is that it's like a skyscraper. And if you're building your skyscraper with a base made out of toothpicks, your entire skyscraper is going to fall over. Your root chakra is the base that holds all of the power of the chakra system. And that's why I feel like it's one of the most important ones.
And Kevin, I'm going to deviate real quickly because I think that's really important. And that's the conversation that we've had, because I think there's a lot of miscommunication, and especially through social media apps that say that opening your third eye, I believe it's the sixth chakra, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
A lot of people say that opening the third eye is a lot more important because it kind of lets you see the world. So could you help debunk that? Because when you told me the explanation, it kind of blew my mind.
You're absolutely right. Opening up the third eye is definitely one of the biggest things that's talked about in spirituality. I mean, specifically because, one of the biggest topics that's talked about is, astral projection and that type of stuff. But we forget that spirituality is a journey, right? And it's something that we experience all throughout our lives. And these experiences have specific impacts on the chakras, right? We need to look back at just Maslow's hierarchy of needs real quick and take a look at the most basic or the first step to self-actualization. And that is to meet your primary needs. Your primary needs are that of, having shelter, having food, water, security. And these are just basic needs that need to be met before one can continue on to their journey of achieving self-actualization. The root chakra provides those primary needs that an individual needs to continue on to their journey. It's your groundwork. It's your framework. Specifically, when we talk about spirituality and moving through the experiences, it can be really, really scary. And one of the first principles of the root chakra is to diminish that fear. Fear is something that can blind us, especially throughout our spiritual journey. And you solve that by meditating the root chakra. So you get more out of the actual experience when you start at that base and continue moving up. Again, I kind of just always move back to that skyscraper example. You need to have that solid foundation to be able to build your temple on. If you don't have that solid foundation, everything's going to crack. I mean, we do have benefits of the third eye, and the third eye, is amazing because it allows us to move outside of physical reality into the non-physical. And that's just like another step up from what we're talking about here today. But, the third eye is very important. And like I said, all of our experiences have impacts on our chakras that open or close them as we go through our life. But in order to get the most benefit out of our meditations and moving through the spiritual chain, we need to make sure that we rely on our groundwork the most, because our groundwork is what's going to save us if anything should happen going through our spiritual journey, causing that tower to collapse somewhere. We want to be able to go back to that framework to be able to build again.
See, I love how you explain that, and the reason this came up with us is because I tried for a really long time to open my third eye without balancing my root chakra. So the skyscraper is such a great way to think about it, because you can't build the 90th floor without having the ground.
Exactly. And I guess it's not to say that, you need to start on the root chakra and then you need to meditate it and meditate it and meditate it. One of my eye-opening experiences just in the last couple of months was my over meditation of my root chakra. And I know that we've talked about this before, how sometimes when I'm in a room, I just feel very not, kind of on edge, but more of like, just like always aware of my surroundings and stuff like that. And I realized that feeling of uncomfortableness stemmed from my root chakra that I was allowing to happen, because I was trying to diminish my fear so much from things that I actually extended it to always be expecting some type of a threat. And again, with meditation comes balance. Just in the last couple of months, I learned what it's like to have too open of a root chakra. And now that I've been able to recognize it, I've been able to bring it back down to that solid framework. But, it just takes constant work all the time. Meditation isn't something necessarily that you need to dedicate every second of your life to. But, when
it comes with self-awareness, does it not? I feel like that's
exactly
the biggest theme when doing anything to do with meditation and obviously spirituality. Self-awareness is kind of the key to it all.
Yes, being aware and just knowing what's going on through your experiences in the outside world and in your inner world as well, and how the two correlate with one another and interact.
And Kevin, can we backtrack to the fear that you spoke of? Because I think that's very true. And maybe I know that for myself, I had a fear. And like I said, I am trying to get better at meditating and trying to do it more often. But I can feel that fear inside of me. And the thing that I fear personally is getting the benefit from it. For some reason, that idea of, oh, well, maybe my life will be all balanced, or not my whole life, but things that I can control myself, my emotions, that'll be balanced. And that kind of freaks me out. And I think it's that self-sabotage that probably a lot of people have. So do you have any tips to overcoming that fear and finally starting to do it a little bit more consistently so that you see those benefits, and whatever point in life you're in? I mean, meditation will help you anywhere that you're at, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually kind of crazy once you start practicing it, just to see the weird nooks and crannies that it starts to fit into in your everyday life. But yeah, let's take it back to fear just for a moment. So, with fear is the enemy of the chakra. Fear is what will taint your root chakra, what will corrupt your root chakra, and what will ultimately destroy your entire spiritual journey. Because like I said, it is that powerful. It is such an influencer. It is such a blinder. And we as humans are just so subject to its influence. And as we know, with the root chakra specifically, grounding is one of the strongest principles that it preaches. And because grounding allows us to not necessarily remove the fear, but stand in front of the fear with your feet planted firm and look it dead in the eyes. So we obviously, as we go through life, we will never be able to just remove the things that scare us from our lives. But it's part of that concept in itself expands that fear even more. The fact that we know that we can never actually get rid of it. The root chakra allows us a place to start to, like I said, plant your feet and really start to analyze your fears. And then as you move through the spiritual chain, you start to realize your own self-worth. And that's when the real power comes for you to completely overcome those fears.
I love that. I got goosebumps going down my body when you were talking about that. Now, when we talk about fear and about all that realization, something that I recently read about, and it's coming into the world of mental health now a little bit more, but it's the actual feeling of your feelings. Is that what I'm kind of hearing in terms of dealing with fear and finally taking that step to become a better you? Is feel your feelings? And the way that I explained it was so different from what I heard, because you just really have to feel your body. So is all of that connected? Is that how we overcome this fear?
So I think that concept specifically ties into multiple aspects of spirituality. I mean, one, you have the feelings aspect of it. That is going to come more from your second chakra, the actual recognition of your feelings and allowing those feelings to move and flow. And then you also have your manifesting and liberating currents. And you talk about how, or we can talk about how, your emotions can affect the flow of those currents. And those currents are the very things that allow our chakras to spin and to move. When it comes to the root chakra in particular, fear is something that I feel like is more of an influencer on our emotions than it is an emotion itself. And that kind of brings it back to that blinding aspect. We can't actually recognize the emotion that we're feeling until we can remove fear, or at least we can look at it or recognize that it's there. Once we can recognize it, we can separate it away from that actual emotion, recognize the emotion, and then deal with that fear.
Wow. Fantastic advice. But I feel scared even hearing you do that. And the reason I brought up your age at the very start is, I'm older than you, but how you see the world and how meditation has helped you, your character, it scares me because, like I said, I wish I could meditate every single day. And is my fear, should I focus on my root chakra? What's going on? Like, I still have a hesitancy inside of me when it comes to, sitting for 5 minutes a day and trying to quiet your mind doesn't sound very difficult, but it is for a lot of people. So is there baby steps that we can take to get better at this?
Absolutely, there is. Meditation, is an experience in itself, and it's different for everybody. For me personally, when I was first learning how to meditate, I couldn't do any type of guided meditation or anything like that. I needed to, I just kind of read the meditations from my book and then practice them. Or sometimes I would have a friend read them to me and I would practice them. But as time went on, I started to develop more of a liking for specific individuals with guided meditations. But one thing that was very impactful for me on my journey that I've read about is that, meditation in itself is not some type of religion. Meditation is not some, type of divine commitment. It's a commitment to yourself, and you can do that at any time. You can do it today. You could do it tomorrow. You could do it a month from now. And there's not going to be any real ramifications from any outside force other than what you cause for yourself. But I was watching a documentary about a Buddhist monk who just talked about removing the idea of, spirituality as this type of belief system or something like that. And rather just, it's more of meditation is more of just taking 20 minutes. All you need is to take 20 minutes out of your day to step outside of whatever's going on in your mind and just relax, just breathe for a minute. A lot of people think, or I guess a lot of people have a lot of different ideas about what an enlightenment might look like. And from my research and from what I can understand, all of the people that, say that they have reached what would be, quote, enlightenment, say that enlightenment is your mind being completely empty, your mind being completely still, and not being able to think about anything at all.
Is that realistic in today's life?
Yeah, right. And another thing too is that sounds like somewhat simple. A lot of people think I can sit there for 5 minutes and just not think about anything, but
my gosh,
try
that
it,
is,
and I bet you can't.
Oh my, how it is so freaking hard to sit there for 5 or 10 minutes. I think I've never gone longer than maybe a full 30 seconds without something getting into my head and something clouding it. But it's kind of that idea of it's not nothingness, but you kind of have to feel this stoicism towards life. And I don't feel like that's very achievable in today's world. And maybe that's why people fear trying meditation, because they can never keep their mind quiet. But can we do anything else about that? Like, what should we do with those thoughts?
So I do have one good thing that's worked for me really well, and it's something that it's a piece of advice I give to a lot of people that come and ask me about meditation, and specifically it's breathing exercises. every chakra has some type of like breathing exercise that goes along with it, right? Specifically for the heart chakra, there's this one that will basically numb your central nervous system, and it helps people go to sleep. But breathing is one of the most important things to focus on while you're meditating. And it is the key tool for being able to remove those things out of your mind. So for me, when I'm meditating, I will take a deep breath in. And as I breathe in, I will focus on the coolness that the air is bringing on the top of my mouth. And I will just focus on that sensation. And I'll feel my lungs expanding, and I'll focus on that. And then as I breathe out, I'll feel for my diaphragm pushing against my lungs. And I'll feel for that feeling of air leaving my mouth, on the top of my mouth. And I'll focus on those sensations. And every time I have a thought pop into my head, I just take a breath and I take that, whatever image popped into my head, and I set it aside for a moment. We must recognize that, those things that pop up inside our head are important. Right? The things that are on our minds and things that, we feel are important to think about or to recognize. And we don't want to just shut them out. But meditation is your 20 minutes of freedom, of actual peace, where you can clear your mind from everything. And so you take those things and you set them aside. And as you breathe out, you just let them go for the next 20 minutes. You just let them go. And this practice is really good to help you first start getting the feeling of like what meditation is, what a trance, what some might call a trance would feel but it's very helpful for just focusing on nothing except for breathing in and breathing out. It has 2 steps.
And I love that, because that's something that those are easy instructions of things that we can do. And taking a couple of breaths, if you don't have that 5 minutes to start out with, you could do that in a minute. You could do that at a red light. Just quickly center yourself with your breathing. I mean, you're breathing anyways, but what you're saying is actually focus on all the sensations that are going through your body and separate yourself just for a minute or for 2 from the stresses that you have.
One thing that I really like, that an individual that I like to listen to called Meditative Mind, he, in his meditations, talks about air, being what gives us life, which obviously it does. I mean, that and a bunch of other things. But without air, obviously we wouldn't be alive. And when we breathe in, he tells us to feel that oxygen giving you life. And when you start to focus more on like that actual feeling of like, your cells actually getting that oxygen, what it feels like to breathe in life.
Be in the moment for just a second.
In the moment, exactly. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I love what you said, that there will always be things that are popping in your mind. I mean, of course, if you continue this and later on you become so transcended, that's amazing. But for most people, we'll still have those thoughts, and they are important thoughts. Absolutely. And I love what you said is kind of feel it for a minute and let it go, because that thought will still be there 20 minutes after you meditate, and just try to let it go as best as you can during that 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And what you do, I mean, it's not like you're just going to breathe in once, breathe out, and then maybe it'll be gone. I mean, with practice, like, eventually you can get to that point of awareness where you can do that. And that's eventually the end goal. But, that thing's just going to keep popping up and popping up and popping up. And it's annoying. It really is annoying. But you can't let it discourage you. It's our body letting us know that we have these things on our mind. But we need to also let our mind know, hey, this is my time right now to take time for myself, to just relax and actually feel free. And with meditation, like as we go through
the spiritual chain, and as we get into more complex meditations, we start to see these messages that we formulate in our minds by thinking about nothing. It's a very weird concept that I can only say you have to experience it to believe it. But the more you just continuously practice to meditate, the more you will see that you will get better at that awareness, and then you'll actually start to see the benefits that come out of it just passively.
I so agree with that, because that's really the key to this, is you got to keep doing this and doing this. It's okay to have those thoughts, and the more you do it, the better you get.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of want to go back for a moment and talk about the third eye and the root chakra.
Yeah.
Again, real quick, just because, the third eye has a very big part to play in the things that we think about,
How so?
Well, specifically when we talk about like the actual like spiritual realm, right? On the upper level, we have intelligence, right? We have divine intelligence. In the middle plane, we have the physical realm, which is where we are. And then below, which some would call hell, is where just pure strength lies. And so the more down in the chakra system you get, the more primal you get, the more strength you get, right? That's why we have earth, water, air, and fire as some of our first fundamental chakras, right? But as we move up the chain, we start to see different elements like insight and voice and truth. So like the elements of the two change. So that specifically is how the third eye can help us, or like plays a part in the things that we think about and the things that we see. But specifically in terms of the root chakra, I just really like this comparison that specifically talks about how with the root chakra and with grounding, unlike other chakras in the upper level, grounding isn't detrimental to expanding your consciousness, but it does improve your enhancement of it. So basically, what I mean by this is that grounding in itself is not going to help you, is not going to help you just to ground yourself to expand your level of consciousness, but it is going to enhance that experience so you can move farther up the chain. So when we're thinking about meditation and starting early, right, it just kind of draws back to why people, I feel, should start lower in the chain when meditating first, to learn the real fundamentals of it before they get up into the third eye and start experiencing things that they don't understand.
Mm-hmm. And I completely agree with you. I don't think I did prior to having these conversations, but, I think the reason that you have to do the groundwork is so that you're ready to kind of comprehend all that may be revealed, I guess, to some degree when it comes to opening the third eye. And the one thing I want to talk about, and I always mispronounce it, what is it? The Kundalini method.
Kundalini, yeah.
Yes, the Kundalini method of kind of yoga meditation. That has kind of started getting a little bit of fire behind it in terms of, if you follow this method, you'll be so open and aware of everything. You'll just transcend. So can you talk about how it's much more important, just like you said, to do that groundwork rather than try to dive in to an extreme method such as Kundalini? Why do I always say
Right. Well, I mean, first off, I do want to say, Kundalini is
it sounds like a pasta to me.
You got me saying it weird now. Kundalini is a goddess, and for those that don't know, Kundalini is a serpent that is wrapped up around your root chakra, and she is a spiritual enhancer. We were just talking about those. The Kundalini method, it is, quote, a shortcut. And one thing that's very important to note here is that Kundalini is not like, a bad goddess by any means. I mean, good and bad are all subjective, obviously.
Right.
But, Kundalini is a healer in mythology. She's not a harmful spirit. She's a healer, but she heals your chakra system through some pretty extreme methods that aren't always very pleasant. And specifically, I would just like to throw out here, for anybody that is looking into, doing the Kundalini experience, I urge you to read The Wheels of Life by Judith and her chapter on the Kundalini before you take part in that. Because specifically, the book goes over kind of what some of the side effects are. And for everybody, like I said prior, meditation is a different experience for everybody, and so is the Kundalini experience. But when you are seeing your life or seeing your spirit through the eyes of the serpent goddess, things can start to get a little weird, because people have described it. People have described it as your physical reality literally getting peeled away before your very eyes.
Oh.
Nothing you will see you will not see the world the same again once this experience is done. And yes, it is a way to achieve enlightenment, but nothing that is easy comes without, or I guess nothing that is great comes without a great cost. Yes. Right? And there are ways to screw this. You're messing. I mean, you're playing around with a goddess, and I mean, you're talking to me. I mean, I study shamanism, so obviously I believe in these deities, and every time you're playing with a god, you need to make sure that you're doing things correctly and you're doing things safely. And there are individuals out there that take the basic knowledge of Kundalini and try and have a knowledgeable enhancement with her, and it takes them down a route that generally wouldn't be desirable for other individuals. I won't name any names, but I do have a very close friend whose mother has a brother, and her brother decided to do the Kundalini experience some odd 35 years ago. He is now in prison right now.
Wow.
And just let me give you a brief background on this guy. I mean, he came from a nice family. He had a wife, he had a kid. He was I never met the guy personally, but from everything that I understand, he was a pretty upstanding guy until he attempted this. At the end of it all, he was a necrophiliac. He supported bestiality.
Wow.
And he tried to shoot the mother of his child. And that's what got him sent to prison. So
wow. There are no shortcuts to enlightenment.
Yes. You need to make sure that if you're doing the Kundalini experience, that it's done correctly and safely. And one thing that I've heard about Kundalini is that when you're doing this experience, it is inflexible in its rules, meaning you follow them or you will pay the cost. And that's part of the reason why I've personally avoided it, is because in my life right now, we talk about meditating every day, and obviously that's super important. But, I haven't been meditating every single day. I mean, I'm still fairly consistent with it, but, there's still more that I personally feel like I could do in my spiritual achievement. And I don't feel like I need to take that risk to get that reward. I mean, I'm beating a dead horse here, but everything is in experiences, right? And Kundalini is one big experience wrapped up on its own to basically encompass the rest of your lifetime of experiences, because what we get through our life is what will eventually allow us to achieve full enlightenment. So, if you want to try and hit the skip button on that, it's going to cost you.
Yeah. I think maybe, I know that for me, when I was kind of trying to open my third eye, I felt like I had that mentality too, is I wanted to click fast forward and just get to that level of having my third eye open. But what I'm realizing is what you've been saying is you got to do the groundwork and you got to put in that effort, and then whether enlightenment is something that you're striving for or not, it'll just help you in your day-to-day lives. Like I said, the benefits, it can make you more positive, make you more focused, make you present and productive in your life. And I think that's the best thing that we can get from this, and everything with a grain of salt. Like, we're having a conversation, but always do your research when it comes to trying to endeavor. Because I'm sure that man, and it's very sad what happened, but I'm sure his initial intention for doing that method was just try to be even better as a human being.
Yeah, no, that is exactly understanding what the intention of that was. Back to the point that you were just talking about, I'd just like to expand on that real quick and talk about how, the removal basically of the idea that spirituality has to be rooted in one central religion like Buddhism or Hinduism or paganism. Meditation is a practice that individuals can just do. And one thing that I love about the chakra system is that, aside from if you believe in the chakras or not, each chakra grants you a specific right. And I mean, because we've been talking about the root chakra so much, the root chakra, its first right that it grants you is the right to exist. And
wow.
Basically what this is it's just a primal principle.
So as we're talking today, everything is important, do the groundwork, do your research, but you will get the benefits like Kevin just said, and all those rights will be granted once you if you decide to even go down that path. The one last question I do want to discuss with you, Kevin, is something that you brought up, and it's the idea, or more of a battle, between spirituality and religion. For me, I go to church, but I'm also very spiritual and I love to meditate, and I'm very open to that world. Yet, so many people I've had people get very, very angry at me saying that I can't exist in both worlds. So can you talk a little bit more about that idea, the battle between religion and spirituality?
Oh, I would love to.
I know you.
Yeah. So one of the biggest differences between spirituality and any religion, and in my opinion, is the fact that spirituality more encompasses a lifestyle over anything else. I mean, with religion, I'm not saying that religions don't have lifestyles that tag along with them, but specifically with spirituality, it's more of a lifestyle type of practice. I go to bed every night and I do a brief meditation, or I learned that when I'm starting to feel this particular way, if I just stop for a moment, take a deep breath, I can overcome this. It's more of that type of a lifestyle. And one of the things, as you know, I practice a multitude of different, ideals, right? But I have very much enjoy the shamanic community, especially in my area. But I know shamans that are Christians, and there are shamans out there that are pagans, and that's kind of like
they can happily coexist.
It can happily coexist. And with shamanism specifically, again, it's a particular lifestyle that you choose. Shamanism isn't a religion. It is the farthest thing from a religion. You can believe whatever you want to believe and still practice shamanism, because it's a lifestyle. It's not a particular set of rules that you have to follow. Spirituality, like I said with the root chakra, it grants you specific rights. And I mean, number one being the right to exist. That's really prominent in our today's society, especially with how high suicide rates have been in the last 20, 30 years. Just understanding these basic primal rights can change your life, because, you do have the right to exist. You have the right to take up space and to breathe oxygen. You have that right because you were born on this planet. You have that right, and no one can take that away from you.
I love that. I think that is a feeling that acceptance that a lot of people struggle with. So absolutely fantastic. Kevin, thank you so much for this amazing conversation. Is there anything else you want to tell to the people? And also for those who want to have this conversation with you, how can they get in contact with you?
Well, the first thing I would say is, just like we talked about, do your research and everything that you do. There's a lot of crazy stuff out there. The book that started me on this entire journey was, like I said, The Wheels of Life by Anodea Judith. It is a Hindu-based book, but it will give you a very good idea of what the general chakras are, what they do, and give you basic meditations to just start to practice.
And how do people get in touch with you, Kevin?
The best way to get in touch with me is going to be through my email at chasekevin46@gmail.com.
Awesome. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us on The Tea with B. This is an amazing conversation and one that can go even broader when it comes to spirituality and meditation. But, just if you want to see those benefits, start now. And like Kevin said, it's a process and you'll build on it and you'll get better. You just gotta start. So thank you, Kevin. And we will have all the information on the episode info. Like he said, make sure to do your research and just start doing it day to day and you'll get better at it, whether enlightenment is your goal or not. So thank you, Kevin.
Thank you so much for having me.
And a very big thank you to everyone who tuned into this episode. Remember, when you are ready to spill the tea in whatever is going on with you, you can do so by contacting us on Twitter and Instagram at The Tea with B. And until next time, little buzzlings.